It's the top 5 Dimir Commanders.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back to Commander Countdown. This is the series where we... I know. Lay down. Be calm. Welcome back to Commander Countdown. This is the series where we poll the community on various topics and give you guys the results. Today we're going to be going over the top blue, black, or Dimir Commanders. But before we give you the results from the community poll, we're going to go over our honorable mentions that didn't make the list. Veggie, what is your favorite or most powerful Dimir Commander?
I have a long list, but I had to point this one out because a couple of you did vote for this. It just didn't quite make the top 5. My pick is John Irenicus Shattered One. It's a 4-mana 3/3. At the beginning of your end step, target opponent gains control of up to one target creature you control. Put 2+1/+1 counters on it and tap it. It's goaded for the rest of the game, and it gains this creature can't be sacrificed. And whenever a creature you own but didn't control attacks, you draw a card.
There's some value there, but that is a weird commander.
Okay, take a second, listen, go back and listen to all the words that I said, and then the first thing, well, there's some value there. I could see the value in it. I could understand a value engine with that.
Because you're making a creature and never attack you and kill all of your opponents, and you get to draw every time it does, and it has to attack. That seems cool. Am I wrong?
That's very right. I agree with you there, but it's just like very different brains. You're like, okay, yeah, I see some value there. I'm like, no, it's not a big upside, but you just do weird stuff with it.
That was my point. Was like, I can see some value, but like, I don't know that I would put this on the list for like top 5 Dimir Commanders, right? Like, because it isn't powerful on its own, and you have to give up a lot of like resources to make this happen. And if you're not actively getting to draw off of it, it's not going to fuel itself. So though it can be valuable, it does seem a little situational.
Yes, but if that situation is giving your opponent an Archfiend of the Dross, then it gets a little bit more powerful.
So you just give them like all your poopy stuff.
Yes. But even better, you then use them to kill your other opponents. They're like, great, well, I have 3 turns to figure out what to do about a card that's going to make me lose the game, and I have to hit somebody else with a 6/6 flyer.
Yeah. I look forward to seeing this on the show, Veggie. I think you should build this.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and move on to my honorable mention. I don't know if it's aired yet, but I've definitely played this on the show, and that is Captain Gathrod. This pirate horror is built for Mill, and if you know me, I'm a huge fan. So this says horrors I control have menace, as well as whenever a horror deals combat damage, that player mills that many cards, and at the beginning of my end step, I get to put a creature or an artifact that entered the graveyard from the library that turn onto the battlefield under my control. There are a lot of really powerful horrors that you might not know about, and they're very good. And some of them get better in multiplayer games, and we get to play Slug Boy from our last episode, Toxril.
Yeah, that's a lot of...
Yes. I love Mill. It's so good. I know everybody hates me, but whatever. I don't care.
I actually really enjoy Mill too. It is like one of the first decks that I built as well. And this actually, like, Mill, it's so hard to win via Mill in Commander. This like gives you, also I'm going to turn all of that into massive creatures.
Yes. The very first deck I built was Mill, and it was actually 3 colors. So it was Traumatize and Guilt Feeder, but it was also red for like Blazing Spectre and Browbeats. And it was... Baby Nerd Girl loved it, and this sort of channels that same energy, and I get to do all the Mill goodies and play so many horrors. I love them.
Yeah. Also, like the fact that you can add additional Mill to that.
Mm-hmm. And it'll still trigger at end step if you can't get your creatures in, even though it has Menace, which you're most likely to be able to get something in across the table. So absolutely love this card. But that's the end of our honorable mentions. Let's go ahead and go with your guys' top 5 picks. And we're going to start with number 5.
Phoenix, God of Deception, a 4/7 for 5 mana, indestructible as long as your devotion to blue and black is less than 7. It's not a creature. And creatures you control have Tap. Target player puts the top X cards of their library into their graveyard, where X is this creature's toughness.
You guys like mill too. Yay!
Hey, they didn't say they like these. They just said they're the best ones.
That means they like them. This is great. I think that this is a fantastic... I guess because it's also Dimir, right? So there's going to be a lot more mill things. Sure, but I love it. And yeah, it's got a big booty, and we all like big butts.
Right, especially when you're turning butts into milled cards. I know I said that it is hard to mill out an entire table in a game of Commander, but here is one way that you could do it, because you just build up a massive wall of
butts.
Walls. Yeah, just a bunch of butts in front of you, and then you turn those butts sideways, but not for damage, just for mill.
Yeah, because it's all creatures, so it's all your crabs. Most mill creatures have big butts. So, I mean, we're here for it. And it's indestructible, so they can't even really stop it.
Right.
Let's move on to number 4, and that is Xanathar Guild Kingpin. This was one of the newer cards that came out in the Dungeons & Dragons set. It's a Beholder 5/6 that says, at the beginning of your upkeep, choose target opponent. Until end of turn, that player can't cast spells, and you may look at the top of their library at any time. You may play the top card of their library and spend mana as though they were any color. So this allows you to just commit a bunch of crime and steal your opponent's stuff, and you can continue to touch their cards as much as you want, even though they are not a fan.
Yeah. And it's usually these types of effects are just one card. You get the top card of an opponent's library. This is just like, keep going, all of it.
Yeah,
Let me play your entire deck.
You can get your lands off the top of their deck and then play more spells. You can go until you hit a land to ensure that they just keep top decking lands. Yeah, this is a lot of deck fondling, and I'm here for it.
Yeah, it is also, there's a special place in my heart for like cards where you single out somebody. You're like, huh, it's a nice deck you got there. I think it's better than everybody else's, including mine. I'll play it.
Yeah, and you can pick different people at each turn. It's not like an ETB choice. So you can, pick a deck based on whatever situation you're in. If you need removal, go for that player. If you need creatures, go for this player. Seems great.
And if you want to see Xanathar in action on the show, you can check out the episode Amy
Steals Yo Girl.
Yes, where Amy the Amazonian does in fact play Xanathar in the command zone.
And steals some of my girl.
Yep. All right, we're good.
Let's go ahead and move on to our number 3 pick. And this commander is no stranger to our community top 5s, and that is Toxril the Corrosive.
Yeah, live, laugh, slug. It's a 7/7 for 7. At the beginning of each end step, put a slime counter on each creature you don't control. Creatures you don't control get -1/-1 for each counter on them. And when a creature you control, whenever a creature you don't control with a slime counter on it dies, create a 1/1 black slug, and you can pay 2 mana, sack a slug, draw a card.
I love it. This was actually on one of our previous top 5 lists for most hated commanders, which is probably why it's on the best commanders.
Yeah, people generally don't like to lose, and you will lose to this for sure. It's hard to escape.
It's a board clear in the command zone, and I also love the idea that every round it slimes each creature because it touches them and they all get slimy and then eventually they drown in the slime.
Why stop making that face?
It's so good.
Even if you kill Toxril, when they recast it, if your creatures still have the counters, they are immediately they get the minus again.
Yeah, the counters don't go away. So your larger creatures will eventually die over time when this thing happens. And you have the added blue pip that sort of sneaks in there and gives them bonus counter magic and protection spells to make it so that this just doesn't die anyway. It's outrageous and definitely deserves a slot on the top 5. Let's go ahead and move on to number 2. This is a card I personally hate, but that's more from Standard, and that is going to be the Scarab God.
A 5/5 for 5. At the beginning of your upkeep, each opponent loses X life, and you scry X, where X is the number of zombies you control. You can pay 4 mana to exile target creature card from your graveyard, create a token that's a copy of it, except it's a 4/4 black zombie, and when the Scarab God dies, return it to its owner's hand at the beginning of the next end step.
Yeah, when Arena first came out, there was no limited, there was no brawl. This was the only thing you could do, and it was in Standard, and I don't like playing this style of deck, so it was just painful No, thank you.
Well, wait, what part about? Because there's a lot going on here. Because you can do like zombie matters. You can do drain. You can do reanimate, or you can just do a little of each.
Yeah, the thing that it was impossible to beat. It just kept coming back and it kept giving you infinite value. And it was just, if you were not playing this, you couldn't win. It's a very unbeatable card in a lot of other formats. So in Commander, I think it's really cool because you were right. You can do a bunch of different builds.
Yeah, blue-black, very good at zombies, and very good at putting stuff into your graveyard. So like it takes advantage of a lot of things that the colors already want to do, and it just gives you a win con by draining your opponents out.
I think this is a fantastic option for our top 5, although I might be a little salty. All right, that leads us to your number 1 choice for the best Dimir Commander in all of Magic.
I have the feeling that some of you might have seen this coming, but number 1 is Yuriko, the Tiger's Shadow, a 3-mana 1/3, but of course that 3 mana doesn't matter at all because it has Commander Ninjutsu. You can pay 1 blue and a black, return an unblocked attacker you control to your hand and put it onto the battlefield from your hand or the command zone, tapped and attacking. And whenever a ninja you control deals combat damage to a player, you reveal a top card of your library, put it into your hand, and each opponent loses life equal to that card's cost.
Each opponent and card draw, and it by itself is very cheap. Holy smokes, this card does it all. And it's also important to note here that this was your number 1, but it was number 1 by a huge margin, more than double the number 2 votes, right? Mm-hmm. So this is hands down the community's favorite for number 1 slot.
Yes.
That's like most of the time they're pretty close. But this is by far knocking it out of the park.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty telling sign when Gavin Verhey says, "Yeah, this was a mistake. This was a mistake."
I didn't know that Gavin had said that.
Yes.
How does Commander Ninjutsu work for Commander tax?
Oh, I'm so glad that you asked that.
You're welcome.
It doesn't. There is no Commander tax on Commander Ninjutsu, and this is why this card is so busted, because normally you can at least count on the fact that each time you kill a commander, it's going to take your opponent longer and longer and longer to be able to play it over and over again. But this is just always 2 mana.
So you're saying that you constantly have to use your premium removal spells on 1 and 2 mana 1/1 flyers to prevent them from just absolutely obliterating the table with card advantage. That's some scary value.
I'm not really worried about the value on this card, but also I lose a lot more games than you do. So, yeah, you can manipulate the top card of your library and slap I think the most that you could hit would be 16. I think is the largest cost of any card. But you just mow down your opponents using unblockable creatures, and it's any ninja. So even later on, you just leave her on the board and start swinging in with some unblockable ninjas and table's dead. Definitely
deserves the number 1 slot. And you guys thought so too, again, because it just got massively number 1 votes, right? Like by far our largest leader ever for any poll. So that is it for our top 5, guys. If you didn't get your number 1 commander on this channel, make sure you guys leave us a comment. Let us know what your favorite Dimir commander is, or the one you think is the most powerful, and get your votes in for the next episode so we can make sure we get the best list possible. Now that we've wrapped up our top 5 list, next, thanks to our patron D Schultz and our sponsor EDHRec, we're going to go over a deck tech that matches the theme of today's episode. And our commander submitted by D Schultz is Lord of the Nazgul.
It's a 4/3 flyer. Wraiths you control have protection from ring bearers. And when you cast an instant or sorcery spell, create a 3/3 black wraith creature with menace. Then if you control 9 or more wraiths you control have base power and toughness 9/9 until end of turn.
Solid. I like it.
I mean, when is that first line ever going to matter at all?
Yeah, I mean, ring bearers are hard to block, and I don't, and we're not going to see a lot of ring bearers in Commander, but I don't think every line needs to be that important. I think it's got a pretty cool second ability for spells decks, and I think it can get out of hand really quickly.
Yeah, but I still can't block the ring bearers anyway.
But there aren't any. It's pretty irrelevant. I mean, maybe if you take this to a Lord of the Rings pre-con match, then you might not be able to use that ability, but that's okay. I think it's still neat.
Yeah, the end of the card is pretty good.
Yeah, like Dimir Overrun, let's go.
Yes, and via spells.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and take a look at the full deck list here that D. Schultz has submitted, and then we'll go over to EDHRec and maybe pick out some cards that might help it, maybe upgrade it.
All right. Ooh, we're going hard. We really want to cast Lord of the Nazgul early. There's a Jeweled Lotus along with Jet and Sapphire medallions. So we're ramping. We're ramping big.
Yeah, it's got quite a few rocks, more than I would see in the typical deck. So happy to see that, especially because you want to be casting it early and then dump all of your spells. You don't want to be casting a lot of the good things in your hand early.
Okay, so it seems like creatures for sure. We are laying heavy into the Wraith theme.
Yeah, Archmage Emeritus is really cool, actually, to cast spells and then fill up your hand so you can continue to make that happen. I love that creature choice.
Yeah. Lots of changelings, which will count for your Wraith count.
Ooh. Cute.
Of course, you have to have Nazgul in here. And if you note, they did in fact include 9 copies, which you can do. Enchantment. So we definitely want to get through. Cover of Darkness, Intimidation, and Levitation all give you extra evasion on top of the menace that the Wraiths already get.
And it's important to note that this has some powerful cards in here. Black Market Connections, Cyclonic Rift. Like, this deck means business. Mm-hmm. As much as you were poking fun at the Wraith, like, this is some powerful stuff.
Yeah. And it's even to note, Black Market Connections does make shapeshifters. They have changelings, so those will also count toward your Wraiths.
Yep. Solid suite of removal and counter magic.
Mm-hmm. Ooh, there's a nice little include here, Darkness. I don't see that too often. I think it should be played more. It's just Black Fog. It's just fog. And this seems like it would be the bread and butter of the sorceries and instants because we want to be casting as many of these as possible.
Yep. Things that cycle away, like Birthday Escape. Love it.
Yeah. Ooh, the Return or Raise the Palisade. Definitely one I think you're going to be seeing a lot more often at your commander tables for anything that cares about creature type.
Okay. So overall, I like this deck. I think it was very well put together with a lot of thought in each category of cards, like the artifacts, the instants and sorceries, the creatures, all seem to play very well into what this Wraith is trying to do.
Yeah. I will say, I think it needs more ramp, which is weird since that's the first thing we pointed out. But I didn't really see much for the rest of the deck as we went through. And getting any of those early in the game would be very nice. But I think we only had 7 artifacts total, and one of them wasn't even ramp. So you may have to mulligan pretty aggressively to get the hand that you want for this.
I will say ramp is kind of hard to find in Dimir, but maybe that's something we can look at when we head on over to EDHRec for the recommendation section. But before we do, the last thing we want to do when looking at this deck is give it our personal ratings. That isn't necessarily power level, but it's the NerdGirl and Veggie score, as it were. So Veggie, what do you think of this Lord of the Nazgul deck?
I like that it really leaned into a particular theme. Wraiths as your creature type is for sure not something that you're going to see anywhere else other than this deck. So flavor points for sure. I think the card choices were pretty solid, but I definitely would have wanted some worse cards. It's a little too strong for me. And I like some like weird jank choices, and these all seem like good cards. So I think I'm going to give this a solid 6 on the Veggie scale.
Okay. So my personal scale, a little different. I do love, like Veggie, that this is a unique class. This is kind of taking a creature type that you wouldn't see often and then giving it some extra power, really boosting it, making it a little bit more competitive for something you would not typically think to be a competitive deck. So to me, the flavor and the added power level to bring a card we wouldn't normally see elevated up to the top tables, I think that's super cool. So I'm going to give it a pretty high score. I like this at an 8.
Ooh.
Because the flavor is just so perfect for me. So very well done, D. Schultz. We love the deck. So let's go ahead and jump on over to EDHRec now and see if we can find any suggestions that we might have included in our personal builds of this, and maybe sort of touch on those little spots that we thought could use some tuning up, like mana ramp. Mm-hmm. All right.
Just to be clear, so on average, we've given this deck a 7.
Yes. Every deck is a 7.
All right, here we are. New cards. I don't think the new card section will actually be terribly relevant here, since all of these are mostly new cards.
Yep.
But we do see, I think, all of these.
Yeah, the Wraiths were all included in the deck, so that's pretty on point.
Yeah.
Archmage Emeritus I saw in there, which I thought was a wonderful include.
Yeah. Now, interesting though, there's these first 3 were all cantrips that I don't know if we saw all of them. We definitely saw a few of them. But you could possibly build it to lay more into the instant sorceries versus the Wraith theme.
We did see like Night's Whisper, Brainstorm, definitely saw all of those. So hitting a good chunk of them, certainly.
Yeah. Call of the Ring. That was one that wasn't in there. I don't know. I think it's a better choice not to have this card. It's flavorful for sure, but I don't think it plays in your game plan at all.
Well, the Wraiths do have Menace. So like getting to connect with those things is pretty relevant. Once you've tempted the 4th time and you are now dealing a bonus 3 damage with every menacing Wraith and you just keep connecting, I think it's a pretty neat include if you can find the space.
Yeah.
And cycling, so much value.
Oh, Frantic Search, free spells. That's also important. I know I saw Snap in the list, but I think the more free spells that you can put in, the better. Oh, Pongify, classic me card. Turn something into a monkey? Yeah. In blue.
You liking monkeys? No way. I would have never guessed.
Like your best creature? It's a monkey now.
Ooh, I like Talran Sky Summoner as well. Just more creatures that can keep those instants and sorceries maximum value, because there might be a situation where you just can't keep your commander on the board. So being able to also get additional triggers from this is really cute.
Mm-hmm. It seems like a lot of the people that are submitting decks to EDHRec are leaning much more heavily into the instant and sorcery, like Spellslinger build of this than the Wraith build that we've seen from D. Schultz.
Oh, that's kind of cute. Mirkwood Bats, as always. Like, that thing is just insane. And we're making tokens.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go ahead and move down to the enchantments. I didn't actually see a ton of enchantments in the deck that would sort of capitalize on this. We did see the black market connections, but let's see if we can find something else that will kind of put a little cherry on top here.
Yeah. Can always pop that Ristic Study in there for to bump your power level.
Storm of Sauron, it's expensive, but in a deck that is cycling through and drawing a lot of cards can be pretty good.
Yeah, it'll be very easy to cast your second spell when half your spells are cantrips.
Yeah.
Short list.
Yep. Any planeswalkers that we can use to spice up the deck? Looks like the only recommended one is Professor Onyx. That's a not Minecraft. It's a spellcraft. What is it? Magecraft. Magecraft. That's the one. Leave me alone, Veggie. I'm tired.
Yeah, the Minecraft ability here is pretty good because you're casting a lot of instants and sorceries, and that's going to trigger the Minecraft each time to make your opponent lose 2 life and you gain 2 life. So if you wanted to lean into like more of a Minecraft strategy, then I would say, yeah, definitely include Professor Onyx.
I hate you, Veggie. All right. The last thing we really wanted to take a look at that we saw was missing was the mana artifacts. Mm-hmm. And make sure we get in a full suite of those. We did see the classics there: Ring, Arcane Signet. I I don't know if I saw Dimir Signet.
Yeah, may not have seen that, but like, because my thoughts right away were, okay, include Dimir Signet, include Felwar Stone for additional color mana. Thought Vessel seems like a good include as well, since you're probably drawing a lot of cards.
Yeah.
I don't mind Mind Stone. And Midnight Clock.
Yeah, I definitely think Midnight is a big include here.
Midnight Clock, every deck.
How many more of these would you want to put in, you think?
I'd slam it full of them, honestly.
All of them?
Yeah, because the more mana that you've got, if you're just casting cantrips and getting extra value off of them each time, then I'd always want the extra mana. I like the consistency of it.
And there's a fair number of cards in the deck that help you loot away these extra lands if you're drawing them mid to late game. So you've used a bunch of your spells in this slot to ramp, and then now you are sort of flooded, right? You get a little too many lands at that point because you want to draw into a perfect number, but there is a ton of ring tempt in this. So every time you swing, you'll get to loot one of those away. So it'll self-correct a little bit in that way, especially if you're putting in anything extra like the flavorful, the ring tempts you. What is that card called?
Oh, Call of the Ring.
Call of the Ring, yes. I think that would be a good reason as well. So you will be not punished for overstocking on these artifacts, I think.
Okay, yes, I am on board with including that enchantment now.
Are you making fun of me?
I'm not making fun of you. No, because before I very honestly was like, I don't think I would put this in here because I don't think it plays in your game plan, but that guarantees your ring temp so that you have a way to get through the rocks that you don't want later.
Anyway, so overall, I think this Minecraft deck is pretty spot on. We're looking at like 4 more mana rocks that we would put in, including Clock being one of the biggest ones. I like the other creatures that sort of want those instants and sorceries to be cast, like the Summoner. What would be your recommendation from this?
I would even, I think, go a little farther into the Wraith theme because I like that angle so much. There were a handful more Changeling cards that you could add there, and probably some actual Wraiths that are not good Magic cards, but would be adding to the theme.
All flavor.
Yeah.
Again, a really big thank you to D. Schultz for being one of our patrons and submitting this deck list. It was an absolute pleasure to take a look at. And don't forget, guys, if you would like to get your votes in for our next top 5 topics, make sure you guys check it out. I will have it in the description of the video as well as a pinned comment down below so you guys can get your votes in.
That's it for now, but we'll see you next time on
Commander Countdown.